Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 3X Value Growth Podcast. My name is Carrie Sauls, coming to you, as always, from New Hampshire. Just a piece of New Hampshire trivia for you. The first potato planted in the United States was in Londonderry Common Field in 1719. I'm joined today by John Weeks of Harvest Capital. Welcome, John. I'm so glad to have you.
That's good to be here, Carrie, and that's interesting trivia. Didn't know that.
All right. Well, John, again, thanks for joining us. And for those of you who don't know John, he's very much in demand, and I'm very fortunate that he had time to agree to this interview. John is Managing Director for Family Wealth and Business Transition Planning at Harvest Capital. He's a financial services professional with over 30 years experience working with business owners to grow and preserve the value realized from a business sale. His experience includes growing up in a family business and in a commercial banking and wealth management during his professional career. The topic of our 7-minute interview today is his new book that he co-authored called Your Next Adventure, Planning for Life After the Sale of Your Business. So, John, our 7 minutes starts now. Who is your ideal client?
So our ideal client is a business owner, could be first generation, second generation business owner who has built up considerable wealth in that business that they've been running for a number of years. And they're starting to think about the inevitable transition of that ownership beyond themselves. And they're typically strategic thinkers and want to get very involved in planning and figuring out what will be their next phase, next step in their lives. And they're good delegators. And once they go through that transaction, we are going to help them manage that financial company that comes out of the sale of the operating company. So that's our ideal client.
And what problems do you solve when it comes to that value, that growth, that next step?
Yeah, so split that into sort of two different time periods, one pre-transaction, one post-transaction problems that come up. Pre-transaction, we talk about, and we got this idea from an investment banking firm that we work with, the 3 clocks. And so they talk about how in order for a business owner to maximize the value that they get from their business, they must keep an eye on 3 clocks and align them all at the same time if they're going to maximize this value. So the first clock is the industry clock. And so, you want your industry to be in favor. You want the multiples to be high, not as much control as a business owner over the industry, but you want to know when the right time in your industry is to exit your company and sell your company. The second clock is the business clock. And Carrie, this is near and dear to your heart, where you want to prepare the business and all that goes into the business for this ultimate sale. And so you're looking to show growth in your business, have a very good management team, to have a diversified customer list and great products and all those things. So that's really preparing the business clock. And then the third clock is the personal and family clock. And that's the one that we focus on and is the focus of our book. And what we have found and heard is that it is the personal and family clock, the one where it's getting the business owner's head in the right place, their emotions in the right place, and also their overall financial picture in the right place, so that they can come out of a transaction like this with the confidence that they can go to that next adventure to live the lives that they want to live. But the problem is that many of them don't have the time. They get so caught up in the transaction that they don't have the time to focus on that. So pre-transaction, they end up freezing up. They just can't make the decision because they don't know what they're going to go to. They can look back and look at what they're going to come from, and it's really hard to let that go. So that's the problem. Pre-transaction is really aligning that personal clock and getting that ready at the same time that the business and the industry clock. Post-transaction, if they haven't dealt with this personal clock, it can be seller's remorse or regret. They look back and it's like, I could have done this, I should have done that, I'm not ready, I don't know what to do now. It can lead to this period of hibernation that we talk about in the book, where they close off everything, and they just sort of just recede into this very closed approach to life, and don't know quite how to get out of it. So it's the regrets that go along with that. They're looking at all these things that maybe they should have done, and they're unsure about how to move forward. And so that's sort of the post-transaction issues that we talk about in our book.
And those three clocks are really important. I think it's invaluable that you spell out that all three need to be aligned. You can't just look at one and postpone the others. So we have a few minutes left. Question number 3, what are the typical symptoms of that problem that people experience or actually talk about?
Yeah, so okay, this time goes fast, but I talked about it a little bit. Pre-transaction, they go into paralysis. They can't make that decision, and so they're not confident. They don't know what they're going to go to, and so it's that paralysis of not being able to carry through on something that could be the best thing for them, for their family, for their employees, but that paralysis. And then the post-transaction, again, talked a little bit about that, the coulda, shoulda, woulda feeling, the second guessing. They second guess themselves, they second guess their advisors, they second guess employees, the community, and what they felt like maybe they should have done. There can be challenges in their relationships, relationship with their spouse, with their family, with their friends, employees, etc. We heard from one person who talked about, this one spouse who said, spouse sells the business, and you now have half the income and twice the spouse, and there can be issues with both of those. So, Tony, those are things that you want to start thinking about and dealing with prior to a transaction.
Well, that leads me into my next question. What are the most common mistakes that you find people are making when they try to solve this on their own?
Yeah. So many of them just ignore it. Ignore this opportunity to prepare for the transition, their personal transition, and that we see that more often than not. Again, many of these business owners so good at compartmentalizing and sort of focusing on one thing, and making that all, making sure that is taken care of. But they feel like they can wait until after the transaction to deal with it, and so they sort of put it in a little box. They set it aside, never gets dealt with, but then it does get dealt with, and it's sort of after the fact, and it's too late for some of the things that you might be able to do and want to do if you'd looked at it pre-transaction. So another challenge for them is looking at the proceeds of the transaction and what am I going to do with those proceeds. They have to support all, this next adventure that I'm going to be on. They need to support that. Many of them don't have much experience in the public markets, and so how are they going to make sure that, we talk about they've made themselves wealthy. The job of a wealth advisor is to keep them wealthy while they achieve and live this next adventure that they're going to be on.
Really good point there, definitely. Moving on quickly. Number 5, what's one valuable free action that our audience members can implement right now to start to solve all these problems?
So I recommend that they answer these 3 questions, as they start thinking about, and we talk about it as 5 years before they're even thinking they might do a sale. But again, this plays into think not only about what you're transitioning from, but what you're going to transition to. So the 3 questions are, what do I want to do as my next adventure after I transition ownership of my company? Who do I want to do this next adventure with? And what resources are needed in order for me to achieve this next adventure?
Great questions to be asked. Absolutely imperative. Number 6 is, what is one valuable free resources you can direct people to that will further help them tackle the problem?
Well, one thing is that a lot of the information that we've put into the book, we also have available on our website, harvestcap.com, harvestcap.com. So many, we've been doing articles, we've been doing podcasts, so some resources there that people can tap into. Obviously, a minimally expensive resource would be to buy our book. And so that's available on Amazon.
Perfect. And my last question is really a question to turn it back to you. What's one question I should have asked that would give great value to our listeners? What's the question and what's your answer?
So the question would be, why do I do the work that I do? And I speak for my colleagues as well, the co-authors of our book. But we do this because it's been our life experience. I grew up in a family business. My first professional experience was as a commercial banker, working with business owners to grow the value of their businesses. I then transitioned over to the wealth management side, helping those business owners who had gone through the transition and the transaction manage that wealth and support their next adventures. So, and we noticed and noted that there are not many, if any, advisors who are focused on this aspect of a transaction, the personal preparation, the family preparation. So we saw a need. We've lived the experience, and a quote that another thing that ties me to my work, and it's captured in a quote by Henry Ford. He said, "To do more for the world than the world does for you, that is success." And so I think that applies both personally and professionally, and ties into the work that we want to do with business owners.
That's terrific. Thank you so much for your time today, John. This has really been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks for checking out the 3X Value Growth Podcast. If you like what we're doing here, head over to iTunes and subscribe, leave us a review, or rate us. It's very much appreciated. And if you'd like to learn more about the 3X Value Growth model, go to www.3xvaluegrowth.com/model for the PDF.